It's big, it's hot, it's cattle country. Texas is the #1 exporter of cattle in the United States, but ranching here isn't just a business, it's a way of life. The problem is that Texas is suffering one of its worst droughts ever, and the heat is making it near impossible for cattlemen to keep their herd healthy enough for market. Rain clouds can blanket the sky, but not a drop falls. It's Texas torture. This summer, temperatures hit triple digits for weeks at a time. Wildfires torched more than 3 million acres across the state, destroyed thousands of homes, and killed hundreds of ranch and farm animals. Texas Governor Rick Perry turned to prayer. Earlier this year, the Republican presidential candidate called on the faithful to join him in praying for rain in Texas. But climatologists predict that the harsh, dry conditions in Texas could last for years. Computer models show that extreme weather conditions like this are going to intensify. The Texas drought is the worst since the Dust Bowl of the 1930s that forced millions of Americans to flee the Midwest. The current drought is once again forcing some ranchers to rethink their way of life.
I wish I had a cup of water I could show you something.
Johnny Kozad is a lifelong rancher in South Texas, but his 5,000-acre spread has no livestock anymore at all. Back in 1998, during another terrible Texas drought, Kozad and his wife were forced to move their cattle off the ranch.
When I did move cattle off this ranch, I vowed that I would never bring cattle back on this ranch until I had the infrastructure set up to where running cattle on the ranch would be less stressful to the animal as well as to the people that are taking care of them. Rainfall hits this. You hear that? It's
now, 13 years later, Kozad is rebuilding his cattle business from scratch. The biggest challenge is making the dry Texas ground viable, which means changing the way cattle ranching is done.
Okay, rainfall hits that. It just kind of runs off, see?
Right.
And it's going to evaporate very quickly, okay?
Right.
Because there's nothing on top of the ground to cover it.
His solution is to cover the soil with mulch that absorbs and holds the water.
This is going to capture much more water than an area like this.
In trying to make his ranch drought-resistant, Kozad also plans to develop 96 pastures on the ranch for some 200 head of cattle. That way, the cows can graze several areas with fresh grass.
It's like going to a salad bar. If you go to the salad bar and it's a fresh salad, well, if the salad's been out there for 2 days, you're not going to eat too much the second day. Same thing with cattle. When the animals enter a pasture, they're going to get the ice cream on that grass, the top energy level on that grass, and then you want them to go to a fresh area.
But Kozad's plan won't work without rain. And so far this year, he's only had 6 inches of it, the lowest rainfall in over 20 years.
It is a time when you do experience a certain level of stress, and you do wonder, Lord, when is it going to rain again?
While the drought is forcing other ranchers out of business, some are still convinced they can prosper.
At times like this where it's so dry, there's only one way to go but up, so we're very optimistic about the future.
Victor Guerra works on his family's 200-year-old ranch. He believes young ranchers will help keep the cattle industry in Texas alive. So, every year, he hosts the La Muñeca Junior Roundup. It's a field day for children involved in 4-H and the future farmers of America. Kids come to the event to learn about the cattle industry, focusing on how to properly raise cattle and feed the right hay.
Utilizing these cattle as a tool to teach these kids several different lessons in life, such as responsibility, and also that they're going to go through some hard times in life, whether it be, as a cattleman going through the drought or just, personal setbacks.
Guerra says the drought is forcing him to work harder to keep the cattle healthy. In the meantime, selling cattle to the families of future ranchers at events like this is a way to keep him in business. But even Guerra is struggling to hang on, and like so many others, is praying for rain.
Pray. We've been praying a lot for rain and just have to pray to get through these tough times. Hopefully it'll be the end of it.
But so far, hope and prayer haven't been enough. Cows like these can be seen everywhere in South Texas. Their tails are sunken in, their hip bones and ribs stick out. This is what is giving ranchers nightmares. Fred Grumman has already been forced to sell off a third of his herd.
I fear that I'm going to have to start selling some of my very productive cows, those that are 5 or 6 years old, and that'll be a very serious decision. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it very well may.
Like other ranchers, Grumman's biggest problem is that he doesn't have enough grass for his cattle to eat. He's keeping them alive by feeding them hay, 6 months earlier than normal.
That is a tremendous expense because of the drought, and there's nothing out there for the cow.
The price of hay has skyrocketed. A bale of hay that used to cost $30 is now averaging about $150.
We don't know when it's going to rain, so I started in July feeding when I normally start in December, and I watch the weather, and they say it's not going to rain till next February. Well, I hope I don't run out of hay.
If prices continue to increase, Grumman may be forced to give up the rest of his herd. The conditions in Texas are grim. Just a bit of rain could make all the difference to these cattlemen. But until it does rain, all they can do is hope and wait.